Good morning, DreamCon 2019. It's Sunday morning. I'll take that level of energy because that's about where I'm at. Who else was up past 1, 2, 3? Okay. Oh, good. Not just me. Yeah. All right.
Who's still up?
Yeah. Right. No sleep till Monday. My voice is already going. Can you tell? Hey. My name is Gary Mitchell, along with
Joe Crow.
We are your directors of the American Sci-Fi Classics track. Thank you for coming. Who's been to Sci-Fi Court before?
Oh, good.
Who's new?
Return jury members. I love it.
Joe, why don't you explain to them the concept?
Here is what we are doing. A lot of movies generally get the cold shoulder, if you will, and just from the general nerd public, like, boo, I don't like that movie, man. But what we are doing here is we are getting people to look. We're getting defense attorneys to look at those movies and try to find the good parts and try to explain to you guys why those movies that may be generally made fun of by stick in the muds, why they're actually good, maybe even awesome. And myself and the Honorable Gary Mitchell will be the judges, and
you're the jury.
You're the jury, and the defense attorneys will present the cases, and we'll decide guilty or not guilty of being terrible.
And if there are any shenanigans by the jury, the lawyers, or the judges, our wonderful bailiff, Mr. Falk, shall lay down the law.
So, Mr. Honorable Judge Gary, would you, here is the...
Bailiff, if you would start the proceedings.
Hear ye, hear ye! Classic Sci-Fi Court is now in session. The Honorable Judges Joe Crow and Gary Mitchell presiding.
All rise. All right, so...
It's Monday, Gary.
I rose by waking up.
Yeah, that's right.
Gary, no!
Dang it, Gary. Ah!
Most of them don't know where their legs are.
I always win.
So, hold on a minute and let me, would you like me to preside over the first
Damn it, Joe, get your shit together.
Gary, no!
Last night. Oh, I'm ahead again. I tried to help you. I tried. For everybody under 12, I apologize for the dirty language.
And everybody over 18, he apologizes.
No, everybody over 18.
13 to 17 group that he doesn't care about.
No, you guys are
13 to 17, you're on your own.
Allow me to put on the ceremonial judge's robe.
Did you remember the ceremonial wig?
I did not, because my hair has gotten enough stuff in it. DragonCon 2019.
Would you describe yourself as more Judge Wapner or Judge Judy?
The love child of both, perhaps.
There's some slash fight.
Oh, God.
I don't think love child is possible.
That's already written is the problem.
I bet contractual obligation child is.
It's a hate child. All right, so our first presenter today, I believe, is Attorney Bailey.
All right.
So tell people who you are before you start. And what firm do you represent?
Hold on.
Wait.
World of science fiction media, the fandoms are separated into two groups. Those that criticize and defame certain movies, and those that defend them. These are those cases.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Bailey. I am a podcaster, like everybody else on this panel, I'm assuming, because that just seems to be a running gag this weekend. Yes, it's happening. I have what I call a network, which is just a place just to put all my shows. It's not really a network because I think with a network you need more than one person, but I make my own rules. It's called the Fortress of Baileytude Podcasting Network. I talk about Superman, I talk about Batman on 2 different shows, and over the years on a show called Views from Longbox, I've talked about a lot of different comic books. And 2 years ago, I stood on this stage, or sat, and defended Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Wow.
And out of the 2 people I've heard from, they found the argument persuasive. I don't know if that's going to happen this year.
The rest mysteriously died.
This year I'm defending Batman and Robin.
Oh, you poor thing.
Oh, God.
There's a reason we did those trivia questions.
This was released on June 20th, 1997, was directed by Joel Schumacher, and written by Academy Award-winning writer Akiva Goldsman. Budget was $160 million. The box office is $238, which probably didn't make back all the money they wanted to, but for 1997, that was pretty good. And this movie is much maligned. It is considered by most to be the worst of the Batman films. I respectfully and sometimes disrespectfully disagree. That would, of course, be Dark Knight Rises.
Shots fired.
Shots fired right at the beginning, folks.
He said it, bring it on.
And here's the thing. My argument is not going to be like an internet think piece. I'm not going to try to justify this film by going into the gender dynamics of Poison Ivy or the socio-political ramifications of her war of trying to save Mother Nature, because frankly I think the internet is full of those, and it really doesn't go to the heart of why I like this film. Because I legit, non-ironically, like this movie. There's not a lot to like about it, I will admit, but here's the thing. First, it is a Batman film that likes being a Batman film. It seemed like with the Nolan films, Christian Bale's Batman spent 2/3 of the film series trying not to be Batman. Trying to, like he spent an entire movie and like 15 years of his life training himself to be basically a bouncer for Gotham City. And then the next 2 films, he's like, I'm just gonna find a way to get out of this. So first, everyone in this film probably didn't want to be there, but their characters seem happy to be there. Second, if you watch the Adam West television series, who here likes that series? Okay.
I guess I should
Binge watch the back half of season 2 into season 3, and then watch this film. And you will realize it is a legit continuation of that gestalt. And I say the 3rd season because it's kind of the worst and had the weakest episodes, so it kind of primes you for this. Second, I really think that what everybody forgets about this movie is that at its heart, I want to say it's about family, but that's cheesy. But at its heart, there are some really emotional scenes between Bruce and Alfred. Because Alfred in this film is dying. And, you know, it's easy to forget that because you have Arnold Schwarzenegger in a robe watching Rankin and Bass Christmas specials, which is why I'm surprised this isn't Kevin's favorite back and the puns and the fact that you have like a Predator reunion when Mr. Freeze is brought to Arkham because Jesse the Body Ventura is one of the guards. The other guard, by the way, is named Ralph Mueller, and he played Conan on the live-action syndicated Conan series from the late 90s. So,
Forgot that existed.
but there is, to me, a relationship between Bruce and Alfred where suddenly Bruce has to take care of Alfred, whereas Alfred, for Bruce's entire life, has had to take care of him. And this is an older Bruce, and one of the things that they decided upon in doing this film is that they were going to show a Bruce Wayne that is not as full of angst. Now, a lot of Batman fans, because Batman is a Rorschach test, would look at that and say, well, that's not my Batman. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be your Batman, but it is a Batman. And it is a legitimate Batman, because if he's going to be angsty and like angry all the time, you're constantly going to be stuck in the middle of the second act. And this seems to be a Batman kind of heading into his third act and gathering even more of a family around him. Adding Batgirl, okay, beat for beat, this film is a remake of Batman Forever. I'll admit that, where you just replace Batgirl with the Robin scenes from Batman Forever. But again, she comes in and she's the first person to really look at the dynamic of the Wayne household and go, you two rich layabouts, my uncle, which I'm kind of curious at how, they never say great uncle, and that picture of her mother is really old, so I'm just I want to see some dates is what I'm saying. But really, she comes in and she goes, he's been taking care of you for his entire life, now I'm going to take care of him. So there's this serious sense of family to this movie, but really and ultimately, there is someone, in quotes, to blame for this film. Is it the toy companies that got in on the ground floor of the development of the film and dictated how things work? No, that's their job. Was it Joel Schumacher? I don't think it's his fault. He's a director working for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is not an independent film studio. Those executives have something to say about a billion-dollar franchise. Is it Akiva Goldsman? I don't really blame him either. Again, he wrote what he was told to write. Do I blame the cast? Oh, heck no. They're actors. This is their job. They were given a script. Yes, they had a choice, but would you want to be, given a choice between not working and being in a summer blockbuster film, I'm sure most actors would want to be part of that. I actually figured out who's to blame. Keep forgetting. It's you. And here's why. In 1989, 30 years ago, the Tim Burton Batman film hit theaters and became a legitimate phenomenon. And while I will say, because, I don't want the well actually guy to pop up in the middle of this, while I will admit there are probably some Batman fans that did not like the tone of that film, it really grabbed a wider audience. And what it said was, we want a darker Batman. Now, sidebar, Your Honor, I will admit that watching Batman 89 now is like watching the 60s series back in 1989. That film is campy, but in 1989 we treated it deadly serious because it was dark. It had a Danny Elfman score before he became the guy. And it was directed by Tim Burton, who was considered, he's still considered quirky, but And because the film was so successful, and because studio executives respond to what they perceive as the audience's expectations, they felt they had to bring him back for Batman Returns. Tim Burton didn't want to come back, but they said you can do whatever you want, which is, I think, the kiss of death for most comic book properties. Now, I am not saying that Batman Returns was a bad movie. Conceptually and visually, it is stunning. I'm not a fan of it, but I won't sit here and tell you it's a bad movie. But it scared the living hell out of most of the mothers of America, because at the end of that film, you had the Penguin in a dirty onesie with black bile coming out of his mouth. This is not His Honor the Penguin. This is, oh God, he's really creepy, and that poodle woman is really kind of messing with my mind right now. And there was really a backlash against that film, because suddenly McDonald's was upset, the toys that were associated with it didn't sell as well. So when they did Batman Forever, they lightened the tone. They brought in a new director. They brought in a new writer, a couple new producers, a new composer, a new Batman. Alfred and Commissioner Gordon pretty much stayed the same. And that film did phenomenally well. Like, they were legit surprised that it did as well as it did. So the studio, again, looking at the trend, said, well, this is what people want. And since we were on the back foot with the merchandising in the last film, we're going to bring the toy company in to help us design the film, which is why you had different costumes. Now, I would also argue that by the early 90s, like, Arctic wear Batman and undersea Batman were a thing anyways, so they just put that on screen. So ultimately, the reason why this film was made the way it was is because all of us that said we wanted a dark Batman film kind of screwed the pooch on that, because it backfired. So, in conclusion, this is our fault, and I think we need to accept responsibility for it. Thank you.
No architecture.
No, I can't.
All right, jury, have you reached a verdict? There's more interaction I think they were expecting in this.
I just got blamed for this.
The defense attorney just turned on the jury.
If you find Batman and Robin not guilty, raise your hand. Your Honor, how do you find the movie?
All I can think about is how painful that must have been. All the time, walking around as Robin going, oh, wait, can we stop?
That's why he looks like that.
That's right. The court rules that this movie does not have the required license to chill. I deem it guilty.
That's okay. Kavanaugh's in the Supreme Court. He'll back up.
Next year we'll do classic sci-fi Supreme Court.
We're going to put this movie on ice.
Would you say, Gary, that the defense, or would you say, Defense Attorney Bailey, that this your defense of this movie is just the tip of the iceberg?
All I want to say is my name is Freeze. Learn it well, for it's the chilling sound of your doom.
All right, next case.
All right. Alien Resurrection.
And you are.
I am the not honorable Michael Williams, award-winning science fiction author, and I'm probably about to have that award taken away. Whereas
I will be the judge of that.
Whereas my colleague is not here to talk about politics, I am. And I brought a little carafe of Lipton because the tea is especially good today.
It's not a read if it's true.
So, the director, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, you probably don't think that you've heard of him, but in that case, let's take a look at some stuff that he made before and after Alien Resurrection. He brought us Delicatessen with this little guy with snow on a plate. You'll see him later. It is super weird. It is the darkest of dark horror and comedy crossovers. And it answers the question on all of our minds, what if John Waters were French? It is easily the best cannibalism romantic comedy set in post-apocalyptic Paris. It's not a big genre, but it's important. He also made The City of Lost Children, super weird, darkest of dark comedy sci-fi crossovers. It answers the question, what if David Lynch were French? And it stars this guy, who is also going to look familiar in just a minute. Both of these movies also are vaguely about human trafficking. And then after Alien Resurrection, his next film was Amelie, which is super weird. It is the darkest of lighthearted revenge comedies. And it answers the question, what if Walt Disney were French? The writer was Joss Whedon, that guy. So, let's take a look at some of the stuff he made before and after he wrote Alien Resurrection. And I want to emphasize that the themes I'm about to talk about, I'm not talking about to mock them. I'm talking about them to commend them. So, something we all know him for, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a thrilling and genuinely tragic tale of a woman turned into a weapon against her will, and the men who think it's their job to control her. Then, there's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a thrilling and genuinely tragic tale of a woman turned into a weapon against her will. It also contains the story of Kendra, a thrilling and genuinely tragic tale. It also contains Faith, a thrilling and genuinely Firefly and Serenity, the thrilling and genuinely against her will, and the men who think it's their job to control her. The Dollhouse.
I'm sensing a theme.
The thrilling and genuinely tragic tale of a woman turned into a weapon against her will, and the men who think it's their job to control her. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A woman turned into a weapon, and the men who think it's their job to control her. But in the middle of all of that, he made Alien Resurrection, the thrilling and a woman turned into a weapon against her will. But the thing about Joss Whedon is he is possibly the only person who has made a laudable career out of widening the audience for thrilling, tragic adventure stories that, A, confront exploitation rather than perpetuate it, and B, tell us that the prophesied savior of the world is not necessarily a boy. But about this movie, the cast. Okay, Sigourney Weaver kills it as Ripley. She is amazing. The physicality of her performance, the way that she is so controlled and precise in this performance. They do a ton of close-up face acting in this movie, and she is so good. And this is an amazing portrayal of trauma and PTSD. You have to stop and think about the Alien franchise. From Ripley's perspective, everything from the opening of Alien to the closing of Alien Resurrection has happened in about 3 months. She has seen everyone she knew across multiple lifetimes die, and she has been chased by aliens throughout it. And she will never sit down to a dinner party again. And regardless of the rest of the movie, if you look into your heart, you will know that this is true. The basketball scene is worth the price of admission.
Yes.
The rest of the movie could have just been a snow screen.
That was his honest reaction, by the way. They did not expect her to make it. She did it on the first shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Then there's Winona Ryder. Her performance is both subtle and over the top. She is awesome. I am convinced that this role is why we have her in Stranger Things today. She could have been a really two-dimensional cardboard cutout of Prejudice, and instead she gives a really nuanced performance, and we get a really sympathetic character. Then, there are the pirates, the scientists, the military. This is a who's who of great actors and a big cast reunion for the guy who directed it. Also, you've got Brad Dourif. Nobody does freaky weirdo. That shot is out of a scene where he first imitates the thing of the aliens through the window at them, and then he kisses the glass. You can tell he just wants to make out with one. But to get unnecessarily academic about it, I think that it is from Sophocles to Mary Shelley to the far future to just God's ears in this movie. Because one of the big strengths of the Alien franchise is that every movie is a different genre. Alien is sci-fi horror, Aliens is action horror, Alien Cubed is body horror, and Alien Resurrection is tragedy in space. And I forgot to do those clicks. But this movie really does have it all when it comes to Greek tragedy. We've got Cassandra, pronouncements of doom by an oracle who is both absolutely correct and casually dismissed. Ripley's first complete sentence in this movie is, "You'll die." And she's right. And over and over and over again through the movie, she tells people, you're going to die because of an alien that you made, And then they do. It has got hubris by the square mile. It is like ham-fisted Wall Street level hubris. This is somebody who has decided that they can do anything they want to because they should do anything they want to because they can. And it's got destruction at the hands of its own creation. This is Frankenstein in space. This is Mary Shelley tragedy. This is amazing. And this film is exceptionally relevant. Like all good sci-fi, this has themes that show up in our own time and our own experience. This is a movie about misogyny. The scientists talk about Ripley in exceptionally dehumanizing language over and over and over again. They call her it. They refer to her as the host. And I thought, are there any examples lately from the real world of people who talk about women using the word the host? And then I got sick of looking up examples because 5 minutes of research showed me 3 state legislators from different states who have used the term host repeatedly, on television even, when talking about women. So, why do people hate it? Setting aside the possibility that the same people that hated this movie are also now the fathers of the boys who tell us that Rey ruined Star Wars and that Captain Marvel is too powerful. I think that they hated it at the time because it did what the franchise does. It refused to be a duplication of the movies that came before it. Alien, as a franchise, has always been about what's a new direction we can take the story. Let's not just remake the previous ones. It did as Aliens did, and it did as Alien Cube did. It did something different and daring, and frankly, audiences hate daring. In the same way that Batman and Robin, I think, was, for all that I gave it shit yesterday, it is a very daring choice. But without daring, where would we be? I rest.
How does the jury, anyone find the piece innocent? Raise your hand. The people have spoken. What say ye?
The Honorable Judge rules that this movie is not guilty of being terrible. It is awesome.
Joss Whedon will receive my bill.
He'll kill it.
I would like to add that Joel Schumacher will not be receiving my bill because apparently he's been really busy. Do you want to go last or do you want to go first?
Gary, you want to be the judge for this one?
Sure.
All right, well, hold on.
You come. Do the ceremonial exchange of the
Well, I have a judicial surprise for the Honorable Gary Mitchell.
Oh.
You have your own robe.
Hey guys, Bob Fosse called. He said it's a bit much.
I don't think Bob Fosse ever said that in his life.
Liberace says you're fabulous.
That's beautiful. You're wearing that for the rest of the day, Jerry.
Yeah. I feel more macho already.
Yeah! 1,000,000%!
It takes a real man to wear that.
Or an Aquaman. I rule myself to be outrageous.
He needs to be discarded.
You good to go?
Yes, sir. Who are thee?
Who am
My name's Kevin. Hello. I'm a podcaster. I host a weekly show called The Flopcast, part of the ESO network. We're a very silly, geeky show, and we obsess over weird, stupid stuff from the 70s and 80s. So you are our people. This is our room. I've got badge ribbons up here for you, so if you want a Flopcast badge ribbon, the new ribbons for this year are Cousin Oliver badge ribbons. So come get one if you're a Brady Bunch fan. And for today, I also brought out a couple of the older ribbons from previous years. So I got 3 different models up here. Help yourself after the panel to a weird ribbon.
I'm going to take the judge's prerogative and look at the map. I like the lock. Look, in a robe like this, you got to strut.
He shivers.
All that glitters isn't gold, but I am, baby.
And the room turns.
All right, kids, let's do this. Rotten Tomatoes gives 1984's Supergirl a score of 10%.
That high.
Yeah. I'm just going to pop another 0 on it. Now, our movie opens in Argo City, which is an alternate dimension, designed by Peter O'Toole, using only one single building material. Now, among the pajama people that inhabit Argo City, we meet Kara Zor-El, our future Supergirl, played by young Helen Slater in her big screen debut. Kara's parents are Allura, played by Mia Farrow, and Zor-El, played by Arya Stark. Peter O'Toole lets Kara play with the Omega Hedron, a magical ball which powers all of Argo City. Kara uses it to make a giant space bug come to life. The Omega Hedron goes flying off towards the Earth, and so Kara climbs into a giant Christmas ornament and flies after it. Meanwhile, on Earth, an aspiring witch named Selena, played by Faye Dunaway, is picnicking when the Omega Hedron crashes into her cheese dip, granting her unspeakable new power. Kara also crash lands onto Earth, having somehow slipped into her Supergirl costume along the way. She spends a few wonderful minutes ballet dancing in midair. Then she flies into town and beats up a couple of creepy truckers, one of whom might look slightly familiar. Meanwhile, Selena, the middle-aged witch, tests the Omega Hedron by using it to cook a chicken. Then she throws a big weird party for big weird people, featuring the music of 80s new wave pop star Howard Jones. Supergirl, meanwhile, sleeps on the ground with a rabbit. Then she catches a glimpse of Ethan, the dude from Die Hard, her future love interest, who has the personality of a rutabaga. She also discovers a girls' boarding school nearby, and she magically transforms into fake high school student Linda Lee. Her new roommate is Lucy Lane, sister of Lois Lane. Lucy is played by Maureen Teefy. She was probably best known as Doris in the movie Fame. Fame was set in New York City at the School of Performing Arts, which Helen Slater actually attended. Years later, the Fame ripoff series Glee starred future Supergirl Melissa Benoist. And these days, Helen and Melissa are like mother and daughter. Kids, it all comes together. Lucy, in their dorm room, also has a poster of Supergirl's cousin, Superman, and we learn that wearing your underwear on the outside runs in the family. We also see the girls in the dorm listening to 80s new wave pop star Howard Jones. And we're very briefly treated to the least explicit shower scene in cinematic history. Here's a transition for you. Meanwhile, at Popeye's Chicken,
They're making your sandwich.
where, yes, they're listening to Howard Jones. We find Daily Planet photographer Jimmy Olsen, played by Mark McClure, the only actor from the Superman movies who bothered to show up for Supergirl. Jimmy and the girls watch outside Popeyes as Ethan is attacked by a demonic tractor. And I assure you, this is the most exciting tractor scene of 1984. Almost. Meanwhile, Ethan rides in a bumper car shaped like football players for no good reason. Now, we all remember that classic romantic flying scene from Superman the movie. But do you know what that scene was missing? A bumper car shaped like football players. Supergirl picks up Ethan with the bumper car, and they fly, and they fly, and they fly, covering approximately all of North America. By the way, number 80 for the New England Patriots at the time was tight end Don Hasselbeck, father of future NFL star quarterback Howard Jones. Anyway, Supergirl gets trapped in the Phantom Zone. Jimmy and Lucy get trapped in bird cages. Ethan gets trapped on a zebra bed. But everybody gets out. Ethan dresses up like John Travolta. They recover the Omega-Hedron, and everything is just fine, except for the part where Jimmy announces that he's been in love with Lucy, who is still a high school student for the last several years. Now, I ask you, is Supergirl a perfect movie? Yes! Come on. How can you watch Helen Slater?
We can't.
How can you watch Helen Slater as Supergirl and have any problem with this movie, you heartless monsters? Join me, my friends. It's time to love Supergirl, and it's time to love that chicken. Thank you.
Honestly, looking at that picture, I think she needs to eat some of that chicken.
I find it interesting that two of the defenses today have involved accusing the audience of being the real criminal.
Oh my god. It's amazing. I want that on a t-shirt. It's time to love Supergirl and it's time to love that chicken.
You took my job.
I can make that happen.
Would be much appreciated. I'll send you my preferred color schemes.
You took my job. You have to. I'm the judge. You have to.
Yeah, I can do that. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how do you rule on Supergirl?
Guilty.
Wait. Guilty of being awesome?
Really glossed over that whole Phantom Zone.
All right, so I'll turn it over to the Honorable Judge Gary Mitchell.
I find Supergirl guilty of violating the krypton of the Superman mythology and sentenced into the Phantom Zone. I am a professional, sir.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's present the next case on the docket. Please introduce yourself, the next defense attorney.
I'm Nathan Laws. I represent the 42 Cast firm. If you're interested in us representing you, there are cards up here, so feel free to take one. Unfortunately, I was not part of the laptop room, so I just have some prepared statements.
We'll allow it.
So friends, geeks, congoers, I come today to right a great injustice against an excellent movie, namely Crow. Krull's virtues are many and manifest, but I shall extol them for the aid of those who continue to malign this fantastic film. I shall start with the James Horner score. Yes, that James Horner who composed the scores for Wrath of Khan and Willow. Here he displays music of such majesty that you cannot hope but to be swept away by its epic scope. Then there's the conceit of sci-fi fantasy. Such a thing has never been tried before on film and only rarely since. Few productions could pull off such a creative endeavor, but Krull does so admirably. Along those lines, don't we all yearn to join the plot of the underdog? When viewing fights between swordsmen and laser guns, it is impossible not to see the gulf in ability between the two. This makes us want to see how Cohen will save his lady love. Now we come to the glaive. It is the sickest ninja star boomerang that you will ever see. And you all know that you wanted one as soon as you saw it.
We are professionals.
This film also boasts an expansive scope, covering thousands of miles on an alien world. No expense was spared, and the film is beautiful for it. No, I'm serious. Some may tire of Cohen's trip up the mountains, but it is also an effective way to show that these are not sets, and that there is a vast landscape of potential beyond the borders of our screens. The film is also one that understands that less can be more. They show us just as much of the Slayers as they can pull off, and then leave the rest to the horrors of our imagination, as evoked by that horrific scream. Yet, that is not to say that the effects are wanting. Everything from the practical on up, from giant spiders to morphing to laser blasts, looks great and holds up today. Who gets... Who gets bored with villains who are all the same? That won't be a problem in this movie. We have slayers, shapeshifters, giant spiders, and a beast. Who doesn't appreciate such variety? And on the hero side, who doesn't appreciate a party comprising the likes of a prince, a cowardly mage, a cyclops, and thieves? We even have a baby Liam Neeson who doesn't know who the beast is, but he will find him and he will kill him. So, ladies and gentlemen of the court, I hope it is now plain to all that this movie is not a travesty that some have claimed, but a classic that we all should watch.
How do,
Classic.
Don't forget the pen.
not guilty.
Not guilty.
Oh, do we,
Raise their hands.
do we have, comments from the jury pool? Comments from the jury pool? No comments. All right. How does, yes.
Yes, the blade basically grinding its way through a mountain. I thought that was
Yeah.
Right, so, jury, please, if you will signify by the raising of your hands if you find this movie guilty of being awesome or not guilty of being not awesome.
Joe, I need you to put your head right there.
Is this a touchscreen voting?
It's going to change the vote either way.
There's an awful lot of
Illusion.
Guilty of being awesome.
Guilty of being awesome.
Awesome.
I rule this movie guilty of needing a sequel.
So I think I speak for Kevin when I say you will be hearing from our attorneys.
We're going to have this tied up in appeals court for years.
It will be Sci-Fi Supreme Court.
Yeah. Well, we have got a couple of minutes. Would you like to ask the jury to bring forth cases, and we'll do a couple of lightning
Yeah, we'll
rounds?
do a quick lightning round. Who here wants to defend a movie that you love that people have told you you're wrong for liking it? Nothing Star Wars.
We'd be here. We only have a few minutes.
Batman versus Superman.
Batman
Okay.
vs. Dumpster Fire, Bailey, go.
You want me to defend that piece of
Okay, no, I will. He can do it, guys.
I'm gonna put it into
I'm asking.
I'm gonna
I
put it
really
to
like the movie.
I thought it was great.
Okay,
Even
so-
the first time I saw it, I really liked it. So I know I'm a weirdo.
No, there are no weirdos in this room.
So they're all weirdos in this
Well, they're all weirdos.
We have one
We have
professional
one.
weirdo right there.
That is correct. So, in my defense of Batman and Robin, I brought up the point that of the Not My Batman. And Batman v Superman is another example of that. I am not a fan of the film, but in that movie, we see a Batman that is the end result of 20 years of fighting crime in Gotham and it not getting any better. And we see him on a character journey where he's at his darkest. They never say he retired. There is no, grand sense of him coming out of retirement. So this guy's been grinding it out in Gotham City, and at one point he says, none of the good guys stayed good. And it was only after seeing Superman sacrifice a character that he hated throughout the entire film, a character that he literally wanted to kill, and proved that while Bruce Wayne is a billionaire who knows every fighting form in the world, does not understand basic math, because if there is a 1% chance of something, it is not to be treated as a certainty, because it's a 1% chance. That's just, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's that new math that I keep hearing about. But seriously, if there are people who love this movie because they resonate with Bruce's journey and coming back to the light. I just wish he hadn't killed as many people along the way.
For having a movie to defend, I give you a prize.
Oh, great.
DC Super Friends, my first superheroes, Batman, Superman, the Flash, teaching you about potty power.
You might want to wash your hands after you.
Don't laugh, we have another copy, someone's getting it.
Here's the thing, there's the only drawback to that potty power book is that I wish it had been called Super Pooper.
Hey, these people are tasteful.
Indeed.
We find Batman v Superman to be Batman v Dumpster Fire. No, love it. If you love it,
No,
love
that
it.
was, and I liked your comments on that. I
Yeah.
totally agree. That's a very good defense.
I also want to bring up, because we didn't bring it up earlier and we have the time, Dragon Con is once again raising money for charity. This year's charity is the American Heart Association. It is in honor of a longtime Dragon Con volunteer who lost their fight against heart disease last year. Dragon Con will match dollar for dollar up to $100,000. So let's make Dragon Con kick out $100K. We take singles, doubles, and whatever you got.
And also we are auctioning off the giant 20-sided die that you see right over there. Well, there's both of
For
them.
the roller panels.
Yes, we have, yesterday we did an all Batman roller panel. The auction price right now is up to $40 for the Batman D20. And tomorrow we're doing a roller panel for that one, which is movies from 1979 and 1999. And so both of those originally made for us, exclusive D20s, we're donating to the money. The money is going straight to the bucket for the Dragon Con charity.
Yeah.
So,
All right, who else has a movie? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, wait a minute. All right. I have a PhD. These are my thing. Sir, that movie is awesome. I'll defend it.
Gary, I think the power has gone to your head.
It's
When
the
had-
shiny
All right,
rope.
so I will defend it. I will, first I'll list the charges and see if I get them right. Because a lot of people say it introduced fast zombies. They say that it's almost impossible to kill the zombies. They say it's full of punk rock teenagers. They say it's got gratuitous nudity. They say it's funny instead of scary, or funny and scary. And I say these are all the things that are good about it.
Yeah.
I have yet to see an argument against this movie that I think, yeah, that's why it's awesome. Do you agree? Or what's your point?
What if I put for or against?
Yeah. Well, do you think it's that people are against it?
I think that Yes.
All right, what's the argument you've raised?
It's derivative.
Wrong. Next.
Secondly, it's driven by the student plot.
What, teenagers that are a punk rock lifestyle make dumb
More
choices?
about the guys who work the warehouse who get themselves zombified.
Okay, yeah, well, he is kind of a dummy, but yeah.
And the fact that the entire place gets blown up because somebody doesn't read what's on the outside of the barrels.
Hey,
In its defense, people have been making stupid choices at the beginning of the movie since the first dude knocked on Dracula's door.
if you know what he means. But yeah, I mean, yeah, derivative is the one that really blows my mind because it really did redefine the zombie genre. This has been a panel in this room. It did redefine the zombies. It is the movie that brought us the fast zombies. It is the movie that brought us that just because you take out the brain, it's dead already. Taking out the brain isn't going to be crap. And yeah, that bleak ending is very 1984. It's very hard to find a horror movie from the mid-'80s where we were recovering. We were in the midst of the Reagan Revolution and the Cold War, and we're all going to die at any time. Cheerful.
Yes, they solved the movie by making the situation worse.
Yeah. It was a government solution.
It was a government solution.
So again, does anybody here not like the movie? If you don't like horror movies, that's fine. Is there anybody here who doesn't like Return of the Living Dead? Case dismissed. Anybody? Oh, how much time we got?
We could have time for one more.
We got one more.
Oh wow, awesome.
Gentleman in the red, you haven't said anything all day.
Dreamcatcher.
Dreamcatcher?
Oh.
All right.
Evil Mr. Cancer.
Does anybody want to try this one?
I don't think I've even seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Oh God, I gotta do this one then. I've seen it. Okay. Stephen King, in his defense, was on a lot of coke at the time. Yeah, he was recovering. It is, as one other person said, it is a very large metaphor for cancer. It does have one of the few appearances of Morgan Freeman as a bad guy. That's fun to watch. It does have a problem that Stephen King does a bit too often of the magical disabled. There's a mentally challenged character, which it makes him super instead of, try it. It's too early in the morning for me to do this nuance.
It becomes a device rather than a character.
Thank you.
I still haven't seen it, but that sure as hell happened.
That's exactly what happens. He has no personality aside from being Yoda. But there are some good performances. What do you like about the movie?
Well, I hate the movie. I want to
I was trying to be nice to you. In that case, guilty of being full of crap weasels.
Is its best defense that it ends eventually?
Yes, it eventually is over.
I just want to make a comment about Alien Resurrection.
Yes.
An acquaintance of mine, her ex-boyfriend, he renamed the 4 movies. The original, the good one, the mistake, and the apology.
I'm going to disagree with the mistake.
I disagree with the
They're all
mistake.
amazing. They're all different horror genres.
And didn't they make a documentary on the making of 3 recently? I mean, because the making of Alien 3 is a fascinating story.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
went through 6 scripts, 25 writers. William
Multiple
Gibson
directors.
was one of
They
them.
replaced the
I did
director
not know
well
that.
into
William
shooting.
Gibson.
Yeah.
But I love 3.
Remember
And,
when they released the teaser trailer, like way back when, and it was the aliens are on Earth, and that was totally not what the movie was.
Yeah, and I forget but which comic company is doing, but I think it just wrapped up. Someone turned William Gibson's original Alien 3 script into a comic series. So if you want to see an alternate take of that story, hunt that down. All right, so we are pretty much out of time. The court thanks the jury for its presence and patience and for getting up at this godforsaken hour of the morning. We have a question. So once again, our panel of lawyers are...
I'm Michael Williams. I'm a novelist. I have a reading at 4. You should come to it if you like hearing me talk.
I'm Kevin. I love Supergirl. I do a goofy podcast called Podcast, and I have ribbons for you right here.
I'm Michael Bailey. My next scheduled panel, unless I'm drafted for one, which is always possible,
Yes.
is tomorrow morning in this very room at 8:30. We're going to talk about Saturday morning cartoons that are celebrating anniversaries.
I'm Nathan Laws, the host of the 42 cast, and if you're interested in my podcast, please take a card.
And I'm gonna on our Facebook page, facebook.com/groups/American Sci-Fi Classics. I'll post links to all the podcasters, so all of you guys can listen to all of us for the next year until you all come back here, because this track's the best one. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming.
As co-director of the track, you will find me here all weekend, and we have a Facebook group. Please join the Facebook group if you want to talk about what movies you want to see defended next year.
That's right.
Bailiff.
Sci-Fi Court is now adjourned. All rise. No, seriously, we gotta clear the room. All rise.